Hi, this is Amy, and in this video I'm going to be providing an introduction and tutorial of the OpenAQ Quality Checks tool. OpenAQ aggregates air quality data from across the globe and makes it publicly available. The ingest process removes no data except for duplicates. This is so users are able to decide for themselves how to validate and analyze the raw data. OpenAQ Quality Checks is to serve a popular community request for a tool to flag common problematic values. Common problematic values are error codes, negative values, and repeating values. OpenAQ Quality Checks is an open source tool for flagging and configurably removing problematic data. Now I'm going to walk through how to configure the tool in a few example commands. There are two modes of configuration, config file and command line arguments. The config file configures flags. It defines which checks should be run, what values should be flagged, and what string to use for each flag. The default flags are E for flagging the value -999, which is an error code, N, which flags negative values, and R, which flags repeating values. This configuration file can be overridden by specifying a config file in your command line tool. This should point to a YAML file which can be merged with the default config file and override its values. The second mode of configuration is via command line arguments. Command line arguments can be used to configure the data input, the input and output data format, which flags to skip, and which flags should be used to remove data from the output. You can see all of these commands in detail by running the quality check --help command. Now I'm going to run through some examples. The most basic example is to read in a JSON file, run the tool, and format the output. I've already installed the tool locally, so I'm just going to execute this command. You can see the data returned contains the following flags object, which contains the flags E and N in this case because the value is -999, which is both an error code and a negative value. The default configuration also includes a specification for flagging repeat values with the flag R. And here we've flagged two repeat values of -999, identifying them in this sequence with the sequence number 1 and the sequence number 2. And they both fall into this sequence because they share the same latitude and longitude. So this value, -999, has repeated twice for the same location. I can also use the tool to input and output CSV. I can also override the default configuration. So I have another config file locally which you'll see here overrides the default configuration for errors by using a different flag. The flag instead of E is the flag ERR for error. I've also added a flag for flagging zeros, and I've also changed the repeats flag to group by location instead of by coordinates. So using that command line config flag, now I get slightly different results. You'll see that the flag for error codes is now ERR instead of E. And you'll also see that this last value is in the sequence as sequence number 3, in the sequence that these other two values were in before. It's been added to that sequence, and the reason it's been added to that sequence is I'm now grouping data by location, which is this field here, instead of by coordinates. So this has a different coordinates than the two values above, but it has the same location. I can also skip flags. So I skipped the N and R flag, and here now I'm just seeing the error flag. I can also remove specific flags, so if I want to just remove errors, I can just put the remove flag as E. And now I get back just 2 values, everything else was an error code. And I can also remove all flagged items by using the remove all flag. So here I'm just going to get back 1 value because this value was flagged for being a negative value. Now I'm just going to get back 1 value because I've removed all data with flags. And finally, the final example is just to demonstrate that you can use this with the API. So this is going to make a request to the OpenAQ API, and then it's going to pipe the results of that API request to the quality check tool. And you'll see that I get back 2 values at the bottom here that have no flags, and above those two measurements, I have a sequence of 8 error codes, and they have all the flags that the default configuration specifies. Great, that's it. And please feel free if you have any questions or other comments about the tool, feel free to open an issue on GitHub. Thanks.